Hi, everyone. Looks like I'm admitting just a few more. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Tester from NeighborWorks Montana, and I am your room host for this breakout session. We are so excited that you've joined us today. Please make sure you mute your lines and use the chat function for any questions you might have throughout the breakout session today. We'll try and address all questions before the end of the session. Before we get going, I do have just a few housekeeping items. Just remember that all sessions are being recorded. Please mute your lines and turn off your video while the presenters are presenting. This will just help us with connection stability.
Richard, how do I do this?
Please click the chat icon as you guys are joining. We want to know who's all here. Go ahead and click that chat icon, select all panelists and attendees, and enter your name, organization, and your location. You can turn your video back on if you want to during the Q&A session. Each of you should have received a whiteboard paddle and a marker in the mail. If you find something inspiring, exciting, or new, you can write a quick adjective on the whiteboard and hold it up and let us know during the Q&A time at the end of the session. And with that, I'll turn it over to Katie Batterby to get us going.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for attending our panel on creating unique homeownership opportunities through the Mutual Self-Help Program. So I am with NeighborWorks Great Falls, and I'm just kind of facilitating today. We have quite a few people on the panel that are experts in all aspects, and so we have a lot to cover, so we will get started. And first, before we dive into the panel, we just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of what the program is for those of you who aren't familiar. And so can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation? Is that a yes? Okay, great.
I can see it, Katie.
Okay, thank you. So what are self-help homes? So this program, individuals and families are guided by the sponsor organization, which we'll go over what that kind of entails in a little bit, to work together to build one another's homes. Each family in the program with their volunteers commit over 1,200 hours, and usually the process takes approximately 12 months, give or take. It definitely can take longer, shorter is possible also, but less likely. And the sweat equity is kind of the key component through this program. So throughout the year, throughout their many hours of working through the program, they earn what we call sweat equity, and that creates obviously a brand new home at the end of the program, but the key component being that sweat equity creates an affordable mortgage payment that may not be possible with a brand new home otherwise. So the eligibility, they must be under 80% of area median income, have a 2-year work history, and we put on here acceptable credit and acceptable debt to income ratio, as those can kind of vary. There are other eligibility requirements, but those are kind of the main core components that we wanted to cover. So with that, I will turn it over to Katina to go over kind of how all the organizations function together.
Right. Well, good morning, everyone. This self-help housing program, or also known as the Mutual Self-Help Housing Program, is the 523 grant. It's handled by Rural Development through a grantee's request. They create an application with kind of their plan of how they want to accomplish the Mutual Self-Help Housing Program. And they work in conjunction with our TMA contractor, which is our CAC, and forgive me, I cannot tell you what that stands for, but Jeff and Nancy both are online. So once they've applied for the 523 grant, that grant only allows that grantee monies to administer the mutual self-help program. And then the mutual self-help housing customers can apply for our 502 loans. Rural Community Assistance Corporation. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
I should have had that written down somewhere. I apologize. So kind of the general flow is USDA at the national office level establishes the policy. They have the program oversight, the funding, and the problem resolution. And then us at the state office, at the state level, we review the grantee application. We also do the oversight, monitoring of the grantee, guidance, and problem resolution. Next slide. Then we have our area office. So here in Montana, our area office is out of Great Falls that is handling the 502 self-help application processing. They manage the construction, not really manage, they just oversee what's happening and just keep an eye on that things are going as expected. They review all applications that come in for the 502 or takeout loan. Also provide oversight and guidance. And the TNA, they do the outreach. They help us bring in grantees. And in Montana, we have 4, and there is funding available for us to get new grantees working with us through this program. The TNA provider also does the technical assistance, application processing, training, and oversight and monitoring. And they are just our right-hand person in just handling, you know, we meet quarterly to go over the grantees progress. So they kind of manage that and just help both of us, rural development and grantees, work together and meet the goals that are set within this program. And the grantee, which is the champion of this partnership, they go out, they do all the outreach to bring in the customers, participants. They put the applications together. They send those to the Great Falls team for review. They provide the homeownership counseling, the training, the construction oversight, and just keeping everything on track and within budget. So they have a huge, they have a big job to do. The 523 grant is to oversee the mutual self-help program. You'll recognize like Habitat for Humanity. That's somebody that is, a grantee. So they receive grant funds to help assist in these mutual self-help programs. They can be awarded to properly organized public or private nonprofit or public bodies. Examples of eligible uses of funds: it can help pay for salaries, reasonable office expenses, employee benefits, building equipment, insurance, training. Non-eligible uses would be hiring personnel to perform construction work for the families, and building materials for the families cannot be paid out of the 523 grant. Next slide. All right, I think we're going to hand this over to Brenda, tell you a little bit about the 502 product.
Sure. The 502 loans, it's a construction loan for these families that in the beginning, and it changes to a permanent loan at the end. There's no down payment. It can be up to like 38 years, and your average is 33 years, but it can be up to 38 years. The interest rate, this is what I believe makes it affordable for people. It can be as low as 1%. depending on the household income. So that's, everything goes on that. Or it can be up to what we call full note rate, which is the percentage rate at the time in the beginning when they sign at the title company. So the house payment reflects the household income. So it can fluctuate to the, like right now, an example, it's 2.5%. So it can be the 2.5%. If somebody lost their job or whatever, it can go down to the 1%. So that's what, I believe that's what makes it so affordable for these families, along with no down payments. Different from the banks, like there's no private mortgage insurance, no mortgage insurance premium, none of that. So it does make it very affordable for them, and especially because they are doing the work themselves for at least a year. So I do help the families package those up and get those into rural development, and then they do the underwriting and it goes from there. So I love the 502 loans.
Thanks, Brenda. So with that, again, kind of just a brief overview of what the program is. We will kind of go into our panel participants. So we're going to have each one of them introduce themselves, and then we'll go into some predetermined questions that we have, and then we'll open it up at the end for some questions from you all. So with that, I will turn it over to Katina to introduce herself and what her organization does in relation to the program.
Right. Well, good morning, and thanks for having us join the Montana Housing Conference. We really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this program and partnering with NeighborWorks and our CAC to present to you the mutual self-help. I am Katina Euchre. I am the Housing Program Director for Rural Development, USDA. I've been with rural development for, I don't know, 2.5 years, but I've done housing, multifamily housing, commercial, conventional, acquisition rehabs, I've tax credit, HUD, a little bit of everything, and been doing that since like 98. So lots of housing experience. And was privileged to be offered the opportunity to be the state housing program director. So that's a little about me. I don't know who am I handing that off to, Katie?
I believe I'm next.
All right, Jeff.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Jordan. I'm working for RCAC, Rural Community Assistance Corporation, and I provide technical and management assistance to 8 RD 523 grantees in 4 different states: Montana, Arizona, Utah, and California. I've been with RCAC for 4 years. I live and work from home in Kalispell. Prior to joining RCAC 4 years ago, I worked for CAP Kalispell for 1 year and 8 years as the program manager of the self-help program for NeighborWorks Great Falls. So RCAC, as Katina mentioned, actually provides technical and management assistance for 50 RD 523 grantees across the 13 Western states. We're in the Western region, including Hawaii, Alaska, and the Pacific Islands. But beyond housing, RCAC, we have many different programs: large lending portfolio, environmental. We do large wastewater, water projects. We provide assistance to several different Native American communities and tribes. We have a community and an economic development department that helps build rural economies. Besides self-help, we do a lot of affordable housing projects, low-income housing projects. We team with other nonprofits. So if you need more information on how RCAC might be able to help you, you could go to rcac.org. Thanks so much.
Keith, I think you're muted there. Keith, you're muted. Brenda, I don't know if you want to start first.
I could start.
I got it.
Oh, he's got it. Okay.
Everybody's got to forget that at least once.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Keith Nelson. I am the Director of Construction for Neighborhoods Great Falls. I've been with them getting close to 18 years now. And I've done most of all their, leading up all their construction projects, excluding self-help for quite a few years. And then after Jeff left, I took over his position. So now doing all the in-town construction and the self-help. And between Brenda and I, we've had quite a few people that we went through. We just finished up our 155th self-help house. So we've been doing those projects for quite a while. We've got 10 more in play halfway through, and we're starting another 10, trying to catch up on our schedule. So it's been quite an exciting last year with COVID and everything, and trying to play catch up just to fall behind. But you know, it's a fun project. I really like doing it. And, of course, Brenda there to help mentor the people and keep things straight. Everything's worked pretty good. So I'll let you go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, so my name's Brenda Couquet, and I've been with NeighborWorks Great Falls since 2004. But with the self-help program, as far as being the program coordinator since 2008, I think. I can't really remember. But so a lot of what I do is I try to recruit and work with potential clients to be able to be in this program. Definitely, I see if they're ready. If they're not ready, we deem what they need to do to get ready. So what's neat about that is sometimes I'll have people on the list for like 3 or 4 years, and they want it so bad that they keep pressing forward till they can actually get in. We go over their credits, their debts, financial situations. I do pre-construction meetings. We go over loan documents, building safety. Definitely, I try to make it very clear to them that they have this accountability to the group. Nobody moves in until they're all completed. So they definitely do want to stay accountable for that. We go over the group agreements, which is definitely everything from building safety to loan documents. A lot of times they don't understand those loan documents very well. I package up their 502 loans to submit to rural development. Let me see. So, plus a million other things. Like I do other accounting. Like sometimes I feel like I'm their mom, their friend, their cheerleader, I mean, I have like 10,000 hats, and each day I'm not sure which one I am, but I figured out real quick. So it's an amazing program. It's hard. I don't buffalo them about it. It's a very hard program. I'm very firm but fair. They do totally understand the group guidelines or the program guidelines by the time I'm done with them, and they want to do it. I don't want people in that don't want to do it. So I don't hide anything from them. They know what it's about, and that's it. So I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, my name is Jacob Kuntz. I'm the director of Helena Area Habitat for Humanity. We are probably midway through our second grant with Mutual Self-Help. Our first grant was 2018, and we entered our second grant here last year, and about ready to do some dedications on a block of housing and with the owner builders that we're working with. So we work in Helena. We're working, of course, in RD eligible areas. The program requires that we work in areas that are rural development eligible. That excludes the city of Helena. So we're working right outside the city limits. A few years ago, just because of the lack of land that was available out there, we started expanding our approach to the program and made contact with Red Lodge Area Community Foundation, who are interested in increasing capacity for housing in Red Lodge, Montana. So we have a partnership with Red Lodge Area Community Foundation and have a block of self-help housing happening in Red Lodge currently, as well as blocks in Helena as well. So it's a bit of a pilot project, trying to find ways that we can work with rural communities that maybe don't have an organization to sustain the efforts of a build. Key partnerships in place, and I think it is actually a fairly new partnership and examination of the use of land trusts in mutual self-help housing. So that's happening in Red Lodge. It's a, Habitat for Humanity is a bit of a natural fit for mutual self-help because of the sweat equity model. That's something we've been doing since, the formation of the organization. I believe there's maybe 6 or 7, I need to get the exact number, Habitat affiliates that are mutual self-help grantees throughout the United States, and 2 are in Montana. Shout out to Barbara Miller, she's on the call. And I know we have a couple of Habitat affiliates, executive directors, Susan McCord in Great Falls, as well as Heather Harp in Missoula. So happy to be here, happy to share what I know, what we know.
Thanks, Jacob. Greetings. My name is Jeff Nicely. I'm a senior housing specialist with Community Frameworks. And Community Frameworks is a nonprofit developer of single family and multifamily housing based in the state of Washington, founded in 1974 and a longtime NeighborWorks America charter member. Frameworks became a grantee under HUD's Self-Help Homeownership Opportunity Program, otherwise known as SHOP, upon the creation of the program in 1996, and currently one of only 4 SHOP intermediaries or grantees. We were interested in, at the time of first applying, supporting our own sweat equity program with financing through HUD, as well as supporting the affordable housing network of the 4-state region that is our service area, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. SHOP is a unique resource under HUD specific to financing sweat equity homeownership. We've been an essential funding partner to over 40 40 self-help housing programs and organizations. Our initial focus was on mutual self-help housing programs, and we've expanded that in the past decade to include in our affiliate network, Community Land Trust and Habitat for Humanity chapters. We've received 23 SHOP grants over the years, resulting in $50 million in pass-through funding, helping to create over 3,300 homeownership opportunities supported through our lending. My prior job was as a mutual self-help housing program manager for 10 years and in turn a SHOP customer. I've been with Community Frameworks for 12 years as the lead loan underwriter and technical assistance provider, and that TA does overlap with RCAC's role in capacity building TA and ensuring federal compliance. And I'm also responsible for the HUD required monitoring, which involves travel throughout the region, which I very much enjoyed having the opportunity to see a variety of affordable homeownership developments and their positive impacts on the communities and the low-income buyers. So glad to be here.
Thank you all for that. And so now we'll kind of dig into some individual questions for each organization so you guys can get a better idea of how the program functions and each person's role. So the first question that we have is for Katina with USDA is when and how does one go about becoming a grantee?
So they would work with our CAC, Jeff or Nancy. I do believe I see Nancy's name. You would reach out to either one of those to begin the process of applying. So it's a pretty significant ordeal. It's a lengthy, 27 tab application, and you apply. Now, as funding has, been released for this fiscal year, I don't believe there is a NOSA or NOFA that's released. It's just based off of availability of funding and if grantees have terminated with the program or if Congress had allocated us more funding. But the TMA provider is key to a successful application because it is so cumbersome. You want to be sure that you're hitting all of those required tabs, so if you have a plot of land, you need environmentals and you need your building plans and specs, and it's just financial. It's on and on and on. So definitely would suggest reaching out to either Jeff or Nancy. You could reach out to me as well and begin the discussion.
Great, thank you, Katina. And so this question is for, we'll let NeighborWorks Great Falls folks answer it first and then go to Habitat, as I know each build is different. And so what kind of skills / capacity does your organization need to handle both the 523 grant oversight and supervising the build?
Well, I guess I can start off there. Obviously, it's easier to be involved with construction like Habitat is. They understand what's needed and the tools and what have you, and finding the supervisors to help put this together. But you know, foremost for the organization involved is to really know what the 523 and the 502 rules and regulations are, and get that set up to follow. Brenda, you can chime in here too, but you got to be dedicated to the program, and it's not a Monday through Friday job. It does go into evenings, and it does go into weekends, and you're working with a lot of people that are inexperienced, and hope your supervisors are very good teachers and patient and work with that. So I guess that's about all I could really say right now, but I know Brenda's chomping to say some more.
Oh, no, I'm not. And I think a lot of times people don't understand the difference between 523, which is the grant money, and then the 502, which is the family money. So I actually take care of the family money. They get all their receipts. They know every where every penny of theirs has gone to. They get the invoices every month. They get reports on that. And so there is quite a difference. And there is a lot of rules on the 523 that like Katina was talking about, and Keith, things that are allowed and things that are not allowed. And same with the 502. I mean, we have the budgets. We try to stick to the budgets. Some things go over, some things go under, but we keep track of that all year for them.
Yeah, I'll tag on to these. When we were preparing for the grants, our organization was naturally we're a full construction company, used to building houses with volunteers, getting people who have low skill to work together. So that was kind of a natural fit. I think the challenge we had as an organization is to build our capacity in our program management, but also we call it a pipeline process. So, hiring key positions that would help to manage basically Brenda's counterpart, the work that she does in building relationships with applicants, seeing them through different stages of the process. That was something that our organization particularly wasn't very good at. We kind of had like a once a year application process, and whoever qualified to go through our program, great. And if they didn't, we had to say, unfortunately, no. So program development, our financial accounting procedures, and keeping track of all these different loans that were available out there, and making use of that, as well as helping to package loans in our partnership with rural developments. Our staff actually acts as packagers of the loan. It helps to skip a process in the underwriting procedures. So those were, I would say, primarily program, financial accounting procedures, as well as kind of understanding the ins and outs of underwriting procedures when it came to loans.
Great, thank you. So this next question is for Jeff with RCAC. How does a participant finance a new self-help home or rehab project if that is the route they go?
Thank you, Katie. So Brenda's already pretty much touched on the basics of the 502 direct loan. That's, as she mentioned, is really just a hand in glove fit for the new construction mutual self-help program. But I wanted to just take a couple minutes, if I may, and talk about what may be the other two lesser known USDA Rural Development 523 grant programs. Another great pathway into home ownership could be the acquisition rehab program, again, administered by Rural Development, and a grantee would run the program. The acquisition rehab program is financed typically through a couple of different options, mainly the 502 direct loan that Brenda outlined. The families would come into a grantee, say such as Brenda at NeighborWorks, and she would help them apply, fill out the application, and package their loan for a 502 direct loan, same as new construction mutual self-help. The families would go out in their rural area and locate and put an offer in on typically an older house, wouldn't have to be real old housing stock, but something in need of rehab that they could purchase at an affordable price. And then the construction team for the grantee would help them inspect, put a scope of work together, and with RD's approval, accept that scope of work, put a budget together, and close on the loan and start construction. The acquisition rehab program, as mentioned, is it's a great pathway to home ownership, as the families can gain equity as well, because there's a as-is appraisal done in the beginning at purchase, and then there's an as-improved appraisal at the tail end. And again, any equity achieved through those appraisals goes into the equity position for the families. They work as a team, meaning not a group as new construction, but a team could be their family members, volunteers, and the self-help staff teach, train, and demonstrate how to do the things. And there's different trades and stuff involved, electricians, plumbers that are brought in through the help of the grantee as well, similar to new construction. The second rehab position or program is owner-occupied rehab. A lot of people call it the repair and rehabilitation program. The 504 loan is typically utilized there. For owner-occupied rehab, there is a 504 loan that goes up to $7,500, a one-time forgivable loan, as long as you stay in the home for 3 years. The loan program on the 504 side is up to $20,000 with a 1% fixed rate. And again, this program works great for rural areas that have aging housing stock that maybe they just want to modernize the home. Typically what we see on the 504 owner-occupied rehab program is people trying to get their homes up to health and safety standards, code compliance, that type of thing. And so, again, an excellent program with regard to maintaining the home that you already own and getting it back into shape. So thanks again, and I'll hand it back.
Yeah. So the next question is related to SHOP with community frameworks. And so how does self-help housing, how do the programs benefit from the use of SHOP dollars?
Well, SHOP was originally created to support mutual self-help housing and Habitat for Humanity sweat equity programs. So it is a natural fit. It's an adjunct to the funding otherwise available for those programs. It's critical investment of public financing early in the development process, so local programs can better afford to acquire desirable properties and develop the infrastructure needed for their housing projects. Again, covering costs that are not covered for mutual self-help programs by the 502 loans. Our SHOP funding is a loan to the organizations, not to the home buyers, but the loan to the organizations that operate the sweat equity programs as subsidy for site acquisition or infrastructure. Those are the two eligible first uses of SHOP funds. Community Frameworks offers 10-year zero interest forgivable loans to the organizations at a rate of $15,000 per unit, according to HUD regulations. So for example, if there's a 10-lot subdivision, you're buying 10 build-ready lots, or for that matter, raw land where 10-lot subdivision is going to be developed, that's $150,000 of SHOP financing that is available to that project. There are no financing costs for Community Framework SHOP loans, and it's often used in lieu of or as a complement to pre-development loans from banks or CDFIs. but those can be more difficult to secure or certainly more costly. Again, no financing costs for the SHOP loans. The cost savings realized by our SHOP affiliates helps reduce the building lot cost, the purchase price to the home buyers, or at least maintain affordability. Here's key, it's additional use beyond acquisition infrastructure. Upon sale of the lots to the home buyers, SHOP may be revolved for use as gap mortgage financing, not limited to that same 15,000. So some home buyers, our affiliates may need $3,000 to fill a gap to qualify for the 502 loan. They may need $30,000. Or on the other hand, SHOP upon sale of the lots can be revolved, saved and recycled for future acquisition and infrastructure expenses. After 10 years though, it becomes an unrestricted resource for the organization, totally unrestricted after 10 years when the loan is forgiven at the end of the 10-year term.
Great, thank you. And I think the next question is for you as well, and I think you briefly touched on it, but how does SHOP funding requirements overlap with the USDA RD requirements, and how are they distinct from one another?
Yeah, the overlap, one factor is that both funding sources require home buyer income to be at or below 80% of area median income. But as of fiscal year 2020, HUD is now allowing USDA's two-tier income banding qualifying guidelines when home buyers are financed by 502 direct mortgages. So I'm so glad that the two federal agencies got on the same page on that detail. It's unfortunately not retroactive, but starting in fiscal year 2020, RD's income banding is allowed for SHOP funding. SHOP is very compatible with both mutual self-help, new construction group builds, and acquisition rehab, the individual home buyers, but not for owner-occupied repairs and rehabs. Documentation requirements align well, the 502 loan files with income verification, labor agreements, appraisals, and record keeping, such as timesheets for the home buyers and volunteers. They do align. And of course, federal fair housing laws, non-discrimination, accommodation, marketing. The distinctions include SHOP is not limited to rural communities. Another area where they're distinct, unfortunately, is in the environmental review process under NEPA. Often distinct in spite of regulations that encourage cooperation between the federal agencies. Unfortunately, lack of cooperation increases, adds time, costs, and unfortunate duplication. By the way, 523 grantees are highly encouraged to inform RD when they initiate a HUD environmental assessment in hopes of creating some efficiency in the process. HUD's NEPA review is typically more extensive due to the funding being used for property acquisition and infrastructure. The processes do align better for scattered site projects like acquisition rehab, when there are fewer than 5 units to be acquired or developed. The SHOP, another distinction, SHOP minimum labor requirement under HUD's guidelines is 50 or 100 hours of home buyer labor. Obviously, mutual self-help well exceeds that. Some acquisition rehab programs target those minimum labor hours, and they still can receive, the organization can get $15,000 per lot. The minimum value and credit for home buyer labor is defined by HUD is $10 an hour. So again, distinct from mutual self-help. There are a couple other little details like EPA certified water sense plumbing fixtures are required for SHOP, and providing guidance to the home buyers on the use and maintenance of the energy and water saving features of their home. And for those who've known SHOP requirements over the years, Energy Star certification and or appliance or building products used to be required by HUD for SHOP, but they dropped that about 5 years ago. So it's still encouraged, but not required. So again, it's a wonderful match for self-help housing programs.
Thanks, Jeff. So this next question, I think a lot of people will be curious on, and we'll let Jacob take it first, and then NeighborWorks can answer it as well. But how do you manage your build? Kind of what is your process? What's the timing, number of family, how your staff kind of functions? What does that look like for, again, Habitat first, and then we'll go over to NeighborWorks.
Sounds good. I'll do my best to distill this down to what's equivalent to a soundbite. There's a lot more. I'm happy for folks to contact me directly about more information. And I just want to, there's several questions in the chat function I'll try to, touch on. So yeah, there's how things should work, and then there's how things do work, especially when you add in the human element. We're obviously working with people who have full-time jobs, kids that they have to, take care of, in addition to coming out and basically doing the equivalent of a part-time job in addition to that. So, there's a lot of working with folks and trying to make things work and trying to figure out how do you put together the parameters of a federal loan or federal grant and loan programs with the human element. So I'll just mention that. There's also there's a lot of things that have to come together to make things work, including land acquisition. Of course, I don't want to say the I word on camera, but inflation and how that affects things. In addition to just throw on a pandemic, and then try to make all that work. It's a trick. It's an amazing program in the sense that you get these people together and they're dependent on one another to be successful, and so they really are a build group. So they come together. We actually sealed the build groups during this year, where we basically had no one coming in who is strange, and we did health monitor screenings to get through basically build times. And even with that, we had to shut down on a couple occasions with some scares. But in the meantime, you have to be, good and accurate. Timely communication is key to this. We usually, and the way that we work is we have kind of a revolving application process. Folks are coming to us. We have 200 individuals and families constituting about 500 people on our list of folks who have contacted with us at different stages of being ready to take on a loan through the program. We then basically put together a build group based on who is first on that list and who's ready to take on the program. It is a very challenging, physically demanding program. And so we get a lot of folks that we want to be upfront and real about the process from the very beginning. So right now, our next build group in Helena is currently meeting and going through pre-construction meetings. They then start building together on each other's homes. And we basically do weekly check-ins, working with the families, making sure that they're informed and knowledgeable about all the expenses and costs into going to the homes, because ultimately these are their loans and their homes. And, during the course of construction, it's just really clear communication, really exact and requirements as far as, keeping us informed. If something happens with a job, they have to let us know, they have to inform us, they have to keep us tabs, because anything that they do could throw off their eligibility. And then, so we build, it becomes a very tight knit group. A lot of them don't know anything at the beginning, and at the end, they're running crews and leading the builds on their own. So their knowledge grows, their relationships oftentimes become very close. And they move in at the same time when all the homes are completed. So it's just a constant process of land acquisition, trying to figure out, what are the costs of the homes, who can qualify for them, where the different subsidies are there with down payment assistance programs. And then, the real key part is this human element of it, which just is a really challenging part of the program, but it's also the most, it's a wonderful part of the program just because of the relationships and the tight-knit group that's created as part of this. They really become neighbors as they rely on each other for that. So I'll hand that off.
Keith or Brenda, if you want to speak to NeighborWorks process.
So like what Jacob was saying is he's right. The human part is the hardest part, kind of. So what we do, and they probably have something similar or whatever, we have mandatory Saturdays. And they will work, and I tell them you will work every Saturday for a whole year till this is done, unless they're at their real job. And then we actually do make accommodations for that. Perhaps they're off on a Friday, so they'll work all day Friday instead of all day Saturday. They work 1 to 2 evenings during the week. And so that's the hard part, because they do have full-time jobs, they have children, they have families too, but they are dedicated and they do it. So that's the hard part. The human part is tough. And this last year was really tough, of course, with the pandemic and the I word that nobody's talking about. Like the prices are ridiculous right now, but yeah, otherwise but that's the fun part, the hard part, but the fun part. You have 10 different personalities. That's a challenge. And I'm sure Jacob would agree with that. You know, some people are real mellow and calm and some are high strung and perfectionists. It's a interesting deal.
And like Jacob says, you know, the main thing is you got to get with that infrastructure or your land acquisition. You get that lined up. Typically, it's really nice to be able to start your builds. You know, we do 10 houses each year. Typically, it would be nice to start them in May. So you get a good jump to seal things up before winter time comes. So they have a place to work inside. You know, with the pandemic and getting land, you know, we did get off course a little for the last couple of years, but we are getting back on course now. You know, it makes it hard to do that. But yeah, you know, about 10 houses a year is about a perfect fit where you'd have 2 construction supervisors out there working with them and alternating some of their times. You have people coming in during the week that they may be off on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So we always try to have it, you know, somebody there with some experience. And of course, as Jacob even said, you know, as time goes on, you get partway through the build, you may have somebody on the families that does know a little bit about carpentry, or they had picked it up quite quickly. They're very handy and your helping hand. And they kind of turn into self-builders, and they do an excellent job going through it. So, you know, but timing is, you know, pretty important, you know, getting the land. About 6 months before we start a build, I'm knocking on Brenda's door saying, how many people we got signed up yet? You know, so get your list, you know, get your list of hundreds of people. Let's get started. And we try to get the people lined up, and we always do. We always have a full round. It's not that hard to get them, because we have a lot of people that come in. They're not quite ready for housing. We've had some people on the list for many years that are going through. They're getting their credit better and getting their resources ready, so they are ready for a build, and then they come in and finally build. So it's good to see that they're so dedicated to wanting to have a home, and those are great people to work with.
Let me briefly reference Teresa's question about disability, and I'll just mention this. This is as I said, it's a very taxing program. And when we get through this, you know, we start off with working with families and individuals who are applying for the program. We have to ask, like, look, are you able to commit to the physical and time requirements that are necessary to complete this program? Really without any excuses. If there's an accommodation that we can provide to somebody, as Brenda referenced, related to a job or a physical challenge, then that's something that we absolutely will do. But we have to be real about the fact that and we've done that. We've provided accommodations for folks who weren't able to climb a ladder, weren't able to do certain things. It becomes a morale issue for the entire group if everyone isn't participating in the group from beginning to end. And it's not just about like the rules on a page. It's about like, these are folks who are dependent on one another, and they really pay attention to the other folks who are involved, the other owner builders who are working. And if somebody isn't, you know, there, if they're not present, and if there isn't like a clear agreement about how things are going to function, we found over time that the morale issue becomes as much of a challenge as any of the other barriers to the program. So that's one thing I would say about the program. It's not for everybody. It's extremely difficult, very challenging to test these folks. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have 2 quick brief questions, and then we'll open it up to questions in the chat or people to come off mute. So I know Katina mentioned it briefly, but is there self-help grant funding available for new 523 grantee organizations?
Yeah, I spoke with the national office I think last week, and there is funding for new grantees. re-grantees or expanding their current grant by maybe adding the repair program on. So there is funding this year.
Great, thank you. And then lastly, Jeff with RCAC, and I think, you know, with what Katina said and what you said previously, but if you want to touch on any further, can a grantee do both new construction and the self-help rehab?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. The knee-jerk answer is yes. A grantee can do both new construction and the rehab programs, as I outlined before. The two different rehab programs can also operate standalone, not in conjunction with new construction, but my two grantees in Utah are currently operating 8 to 16 new construction homes every 2 years, and they do 4 to 6 rehabs simultaneously. The caution would be a couple of things. One, the staff capacity to be able to, you know, handle both programs simultaneously, new construction and the rehab programs. The other primary concerns, if you were interested in becoming a rehab grantee, would be you really need to do your due diligence to researching your rural area with regard to, for acquisition rehab, are there homes on the market for sale that can support the program with regard to purchase, acquisition, and rehabbing them. So, you know, you wouldn't want to just put a grant application together for acquisition rehab, you know, for 8 or 10 homes in a 2-year period and find out that, you know, you could only find 1 or 2. So again, do your diligence to that aspect of that program. And the owner-occupied rehab program, same thing holds true. I failed to mention earlier, for the loan and grants, the families need to be 50% area median income or lower. On a grant, you need to have one of the family members be 62 or older. And again, the aging housing stock, it would seem that it wouldn't be too big of a problem, but again, you would want to do your diligence to that aspect of that program. But again, to answer the direct question, many of our grantees do new construction simultaneously with one or the other rehab programs, or again, individual rehabs only as a standalone 523 grant program. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. We're going to share a short testimonial from a builder, but in the interest of time and letting people ask a couple quick questions, we'll skip that. But I will say, I know from our experience, this is one of our community's favorite programs. The families in this program are so grateful at the end, maybe get a little moody in the middle, but it's a wonderful program. And I know I've worked here for 5 years and have only heard wonderful things from the community and also from the participants. So with that, I know Jacob hit the question on disability in the chat. There was one other question about have social distancing guidelines significantly affected the cost and budget of finances for the 523 grant? So I'm not sure who would be the best to take that question.
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
Have the social distancing guidelines significantly affected the cost and budget of the finances for the 523 grant?
I'll take that for
RG had to. Oh, go ahead, Jacob. You go,
Oh, no,
go
go
for
ahead.
it. No. It's all yours. Go. You take it.
The way the program is designed is that, you know, the build, you know, it's meant for rural areas where there aren't a lot of volunteers out there. So that's why you have this build group that they have a set number of hours. They're encouraged to bring volunteers to the table as part of that. So, you know, when I said like we sealed the build group during the pandemic, you know, it meant that we didn't have kind of volunteers that we normally would have, especially with Habitat. We bring additional volunteers, corporate groups, faith communities and the like to the table to assist, and we didn't really have that in this year. So I would say that definitely added to timelines. I wouldn't say that just because of our purchasing schedule for materials, that particular social distancing didn't really affect the material costs on those homes. Will affect the next group, but it did affect timelines and it slowed things down, which did add costs to the construction.
Thanks, Jacob.
And I just wanted to say that RD was extremely flexible in giving extensions to the 2-year grants, and at the beginning of all the COVID, actually offering up some financial funding to help offset some of that shutdown that they experienced. So yeah, there's been situations where a grant is supposed to be 2 years and we've extended it, 2 more years because of the various issues that one of the grantees may have, like, really super terrible wet winter. Great Falls knows that very well, that sometimes winter just peaks a little early and really things are shut down, or you have a COVID situation, and like we have this last year and a half, and we offer really a lot of flexibility there. At least we try to, for sure.
The one other question in the chat was URL to get started, and I know Nancy put Jeff and her email in the chat, and so if you are interested, that would be a good starting point. So as far as, I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anyone has questions, further questions, feel free to put those in the chat or come off mute.
I was throwing there, Katina mentioned that RD, the state office, and extremely flexible during this period of time, and that was hugely helpful. When we take on a grant, we sign paperwork. We basically have 2 years from when we sign that paperwork to get that grant through. So we have to build those homes. We have to get everything done. So it takes quite a bit of pre-planning to be able to get the thing done. And then the clock's running, so that's the nature of things. And of course, we've had some extraordinary events, and RD's been really helpful with that. But then, of course, there's always those two parts. There's the cost of what it takes the organization to run the program, which is the grant that we receive from RD. And then there's the cost of building the actual home. And so those are two elements that are a challenging one to balance, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So,
as mentioned, I think Nancy added some good information in the chat, so feel free to check that out. But as promised, we said there was a lot of information, and there was. It's a very complicated but wonderful program. So thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their expertise and knowledge. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah. I know she had some wrap-up items to cover.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, panel. That was a great session, chock full of information. And thank you all for joining. Just remember that you can always participate in community conversations through the Whova app to chat more if you'd like to and ask questions. We will now be on our 1 hour. You guys, looks like you guys get a 1 hour and 2 minute lunch break. We look forward to having you back at the breakout sessions at 1 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
One last thing, if anybody wants a copy of the grant, so I've done this already to 2 organizations in Washington. Obviously it's imperfect, so you take on the liability. I will send you the whole thing if you want to see the whole thing. And feel free to copy and paste it. It's on you, but anyways, that's available.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Yep.
You
Take
got
care.
one.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Muted.